Chris Bledsoe had a truly unique encounter many years ago. On the one hand, it has upended his life and some of his relationships. On the other hand, it's been a blessing that's brought his family closer, helped with some medical issues, and been kind of a back and forth. What is this situation? I'm personally still trying to work out in my head what this is. Are these off planet beings trying to communicate? Are they angels from God? Are they a rare phenomenon? I'm going to let you guys decide, but here to tell his own story is Chris Bledsoe. Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Stephen. It's an honor.
So I've listened to a couple of interviews that you've given. I've read from cover to cover the UFO of God, and I've tried to make sense of this in my mind, just as I'm sure you have. Let me give a little bit of backstory for my viewers, and then I would like for you to tell about your first encounter. Your story is going to be made into a movie. It's already been made into a book. You've been secretly investigated by our government. You've been openly befriended by CIA agents. You've been forced to take a lie detector test. You had a one of a kind visit at NASA, and you've had years of encountering these glowing orbs and beings. But would you mind just telling us how this all started, your first encounter, and then from there, I have many questions that I'd like to ask.
Okay. So how it all started was, let's just say the initial experience was January the 8th of 2007. But if I may back up a couple years, because this is important for the viewer to know, the what the reasons were. So in 04 and '05, I had been suffering tremendously with Crohn's disease. From 2001, after the 911 thing, being a builder, building 100 homes a year, my wife and I, for more than 19, 20 years, our empire started to crumble because living in Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty now, in this area, the housing market just dried up immediately. And I had too much property, 72 houses under construction, and I just got caught off guard. And so I sat there and watched everything go away in interest. And long story short, it affected my health tremendously to where it eventually put me in the hospital having an NDE, near death experience. So I lost my business, lost my home, uh, four children, all small. Well, my oldest was 17 in '07. Um, my youngest was Emily, a girl, she was 10. And so I was caught, Stephen, in a bad way. I'm sick. I no longer have a job or business. I can barely function. And so I'm crying out to the heavens. This is the most important thing. And this is why the title of my book. So we fast forward to 2007. I've been away from recovering from this near death since late '04. And my father actually finds a job for me to do for him, working, managing a house. So after a 4 month job, late 2006, we were finishing it in January of '07. It was the end of the project. The crew I was managing, I sent them back down 2 hours away to the coast to finish up the project, bring home the last 10% of the job. They wanted to celebrate that day, and I wasn't feeling very well, but my wife was out of town with three of our children, and it was just Chris Jr. and I. So they came in at lunch, brought the money. We paid them. They went to town and cashed their checks and called me. Hey, boss, you want to go fishing today? It's a beautiful January day, and we'd like to celebrate finishing this job. I said, well, why not? I'll go with you. And really, I had the only way to get them down to where we were going without walking because it's a dirty, muddy old dirt road down into the river basin, a Cape Fear River bottom, and you had to have four-wheel drive to get in there. And I had the only four-wheel drive, it was Ford F-150 four-door truck. So Chris Jenner and I picked them up about 2 o'clock, arrived at the river, Cape Fear River, sat up on the bank with fishing poles and coolers, and I wasn't into fishing. I never pulled a pole out, but my son and these three guys, they were having a good time. And I was struggling with life, struggling with everything. And I just told them about 3 o'clock, I'm gonna walk down in the forest and look for wildlife, and I'll see you after in a little while. So about 4:30, it's dark in the forest and still light, but the canopy's shading it. So I thought, well, I better get back out. And I walked up to these guys, and they were having fun. I'm still struggling. They have no clue what's in, what we think, what I was dealing with, why I wasn't fishing. So I asked them, I said, you guys ready to go home? Or you want to go home, or you want to fish some more? And they said, well, we just got here. We want to do some more fishing. I said, well, it's going to get cold tonight. You better get a fire going. So we stopped fishing. Everybody went around this little acre cul-de-sac. It was a dead end in the forest, and it was just a round circle of grass about an acre big. We went around the edge picking up dead limbs and tree, stuff to burn, and had a big old pile. Started a fire, and it was 10 after 5. January, it gets dark about 5:30, right? Quarter to 6. I said, well, look, I'm going to walk back up to the entrance the way we came in, sit on the edge of the field and look for wildlife, deer, or whatever might come out. I'll see you guys just about dark. He said, okay. So I walked away, leaving them sitting on the bank with the fire was behind them to their back about 6 feet away. So they were warming themselves sitting on that river. And I had a quarter-mile to walk to get up to the field. And when you get to the field, it's about 200 yards across the field to the main highway. So we had to cross the field to get to the backside and then a quarter-mile down in to the river bottom. So let me tell you, when I got about the last 200 yards before getting to the gate, I had to go up in elevation from the bottom where the river is to the gate. You can see the gate way up at the top of the hill, but you can't see where it flattens out, right? And so I'm making my way up to that gate, watching every step because it's muddy and weeds are ankle to, foot and a half high. And when I got about 30 or 40 feet from that gate, I began to see what I thought was the top of the setting sun. Looked just like it. It was when you can look at the sun late in the evening and it doesn't hurt your eyes. It's kind of tangerine orange, right? So I'm seeing this, and I'd look down and take a step, and I look up, and it was getting bigger in view. I started with the top part, and now I'm beginning to see the whole thing. And I thought, Lord, that doesn't look right. What is that? So a couple more steps, and when I got a little higher up, I could peripheral vision, my field of view widened. Then I noticed there were two of them, and shock set in. And so immediately I dropped to my knees, using the hill to hide myself from what I was seeing. And I crawled on my hands and knees up a little higher to where I could just raise my head up and see over the hill to where the field flattens out. And I'm looking at two 40 to 50-foot round balls of fire. They're about 300 yards away, a couple hundred feet in the air, and they're just sitting there swirling, swirling fire going around these things. And it was just mesmerizing and beautiful. I had no clue what it was. I was in shock, scared, but I was curious. I wanted to see this. So I hid myself again, and I thought, I just got to see this. So I overcame my fear a bit to where I must have stayed there, I don't know, 5 minutes or more, just looking at this, and I'd hide and I'd peek back up. And then I started getting worried about these boys on the river, my son down there, what it is I was seeing. And fear took over, and I decided I've got to run. So I'm going through this in my head, and I'm looking back down, making my escape plan. I've got to run through this grass that's muddy and ruts in it. And the real narrow road with weeds growing up each side. So if you drove down it, the mirrors on the truck would bump the bushes on each side of the truck. So I was making that plan. So finally, this is what really changed everything. Finally, when I decided it's time to go, when I turned my body to run, I'm running. I had to look back. So I raised up to run and I looked back. And when I did, that's when I knew they knew I was there because a third one above me, right up here, had sitting up there invisible watching me. And the minute I went to run, it came right down beside the other two within 1 second and stopped. And that's when fear set in. I knew they saw me. There was no getting around that. Seeing a UFO is one thing, but when it reacts to you and rushes to you, or says, "I'm here, I see you," that's a different ballgame. And so the next thing I remember is running up to the fire. What, not running, but trotting basically. And I don't remember going down that hill. I remember about the last 50 or 60, 70 feet, I guess. I could see the guys standing around the fire. The fire was real burnt down low, it was barely burning. There are three men standing looking at the fire, not saying a word. I could see them. They couldn't see me coming because I'm in the dark with no flashlight. And the campfire was illuminating them. When I got up close to them, I said, "Hey," well, it started them when I did. I said, "You won't believe what I just saw up at the field." And I was pointing like that. They said, "Where in the world have you been?" I said, "Well, I was just up at the field." They said, "No, we were just up there." I said, "No, you weren't. You weren't. I've only been gone 20 minutes." And they said, "No, you've been gone all night." And so instantly, this is all within a minute of me getting there. My I noticed Chris Jr. wasn't there. It registered. I said, "Where in the world is Chris Jr.?" They said, "Well, he's been gone 2 hours looking for you." Now, you can't imagine what I'm going through after experiencing this. Now I'm here and I'm not, I was missing. And now my son's missing. So I took off running the direction they pointed. What he had done was he got the missing dad first. And so he went off looking for me in the back of the cul-de-sac down in the forest where I'd gone earlier that day. And undoubtedly had gotten lost in these big woods, and it's a big head of woods there. And two of the guys took my truck and drove up and down the road and had been hunting me all afternoon. And one guy stayed at the fire so I spoiled their fishing night, right? But I had no idea 4 hours was missing. We had been gone 4 hours. So I took off running and I'm shouting for Chris Jr. I was terrified knowing if he was in these woods, they might have to get rescue squad or rescue personnel to come find him because it's dark and big and you can get lost in there. I'm thinking that as I'm shouting for him. So as I started into the thick part of the woods, just stick on the edges. Once you get in, the tree canopy kind of kills the foliage, so it opens up once you get in. But around the edges of the field or opening, it's pretty thick. And what had happened, Stephen, was he had gone back to the back of that cul-de-sac looking for me and was shouting for me. And he turned and he could see all the way down the path parallel in the river about a quarter of a mile to down this road where it's just like a tunnel, like an old plantation road you see where the trees grow over it. This is the way it was. And it went down a quarter of a mile and made a left turn up to the top of the hill. He saw two balls of red light cross the road and went down on the riverside. So he ran up to where the guys were fishing. And he had to go towards the light about 50, 75 feet and over on the right to the riverbank, say, hey, somebody's walking with a red flashlight. Maybe that was Dad. He didn't know what it was, but it's in the woods on your side. So he took off and he ran back after he told them that to the back of the cul-de-sac, and he's calling for me. And these red lights come out of the woods again, come out on the path and start towards him. And the closer they got, the more scared he got. So he started hiding. He started backing himself. He laid flat on the ground and backed himself up under these thick shrubs. And when they got within 15, 20 feet of him, he realized it wasn't flashlights. There were these two little beings about 3.5 feet tall with red glowing eyes. And so their eyes looked like little balls of light coming like orbs. He couldn't scream, he couldn't shout, he couldn't move. One was always looking at him while the other was curious. He said they were picking up sticks and bottles. There was a trash pile there. He'd pick them up and shake them and put it on the ground while the other one was always watching. Well, when I found him, he come up from there in shock and he was crying. He's like, "Where you been, Daddy? Why did you leave me?" And I said, I was just up at the field, son. I've only been gone 20 minutes. He said, "No, Daddy, you've been gone all night." And he's crying and he's shaking and he said, "These creatures, they scared me. They had me where I couldn't move." Lord, I'm freaking out now, wondering what it is I saw and what he saw. Remember, I can't remember anything other than seeing something at the top of the hill. So I grab him by the arm, drag him to the fire. These guys now are really quiet. They're grown men with families, and they're not saying a whole lot. And suddenly one of the guys shouts, "Look," and he's pointing up, and we look up, and there are 8 or 9 stars, as bright as Venus or brighter, that just appeared in different directions all over. You could see them, and they came together, like rushed together and made a circle, went around like so, and then went out from each other. And then 3 of them came all the way to the ground and landed right in front of us on the other side of the river. And the river is only 60, 50 yards wide. It's not very wide. My daughter would swim across it when she was 6 years old. So it tells you how small how close they were. Now we got 3 huge 40-foot balls of white light pulsating, sitting just in the trees on the other side of the river. Pandemonium set in and fear with everybody. We ran to the truck, leaving everything there, fire still burning, coolers on the ground, fishing poles, and everybody was terrified. Jump in the truck, and all I could hear is, "Please get me home." You know, it was it was pandemonium. And I wasn't afraid. This is the weird thing. I wasn't afraid. I couldn't understand. Whatever they did to me while I was gone took my fear away. I was curious. I wanted to see. I wanted to stay and look. My son was in shock. These 3 men were shouting, this is the end of the world and so on. So we took off in the truck and started up out of there. Trucks wallering in the mud. They're shouting, "Go faster." I couldn't make it go any faster through there. When we got to the top of the hill where I had been hiding, where they took me, we cleared the top of that hill and felt like we went airborne. And when we did, I slammed on the brakes because the same 3 objects that were there earlier, 4 hours earlier, were still there. The 2 balls of fire still in the exact same spot, but the third one that came from up here is now in the road in front of us, between us and main highway. It's on it's in the field on the dirt road, and we couldn't go forward, nor could we go backwards because we had three on the river behind us, and we got three in front of us. There was crying, there was panic, there was I want to see my wife before it's over, just get me home to my family. Everything was going on. I can't even tell you how much shock and panic was going on in this truck. All these people and my son and I, and I was just curious. But this third object that appeared when I went to run is no longer a round ball of red fire. It's setting crossways the dirt road in front of us, and it looks like an egg. It looks about 50 feet long, and I don't know how big around. From my perspective, it was probably, you know, 15, 20 feet across. But if you took a round ball and you set it on the ground and it squished out, flattened out, that's kind of what it appeared like. But it's glowing white now, and the light is going around this thing to where it looks like sparkles and these spikes of light just revolving all around this thing. It was the most amazing sight. But everybody's shouting, "Get me home." All of a sudden, we hear three gunshots. We don't know where they came from. Nobody never found out, but we reported that then. We all heard it. Suddenly, this thing in the road pivots, points straight at us, and here it's coming down the path towards us. It gets to this 20-foot tree, which is about 75 yards away, and it comes up over top of that tree. And as it is heading straight at us down the road, it starts rising a little bit. When it went over the top of my truck, I had the sunroof open, and I could have shot it with a slingshot. It was that low. It was totally silent, blinding white light revolving around this thing, these sparkles of light. And suddenly, right up above us, it kind of pivoted and fired off like a bullet just out of a gun, and it was gone. So I hit the gas and took off. And I write about this in the book. There's a lot more detail in the book that this thing could take hours to talk about. But um, one important thing I want to mention is on the way home, we had to go 2 miles down the road to drop off two guys. They live next door to one another. And 5 miles close to it to drop the third guy off, which is on our way home. But they started fighting who would get to go home first. So we ended up having to take the furthest guy away and then come back to drop the other two off. So along that way, there was a curve in the road, a very sharp curve, and a dead man's curve. And it had a 35-mile-an-hour sign when you get to it. And it's right up under this huge high tension power line. In 1982, I lost my first wife there. She died in my arms. I drove up on a car laying on its side, had no clue it was who it was. And when I got out, I found her, and she rolled her car in that curve and was thrown through the windshield. Still alive when I got there, she died with me holding. So I'd always felt, and there's more detail to that, why I felt guilty. I'd been going out of town all day, came home, and it's a long story, but it wasn't, it just sat heavy on me because we were 2 days from our first year anniversary. But I blame myself for not being there. I'd been out of town with my father all day. But when we went under that power line, when we got into that curve, there was this big object hovering right over top. So I hit the brakes. I wanted to get out and stand up under it and look. And they were screaming, "Don't stop." They were beating on the windshield on the back of my seat. So I got down to about 15 miles an hour. And while they're shouting, and I'm looking out the window, like my head out the window, driving under it. And suddenly, this image and this whole reliving what happened there in 1982 came rushing into me, and these words from this object said, "It wasn't your fault. You had nothing to do with this, and she's totally fine." And so the that was the first time in all those years that I felt um, like it wasn't my fault and that everything was going to be okay. I had to tell this because these are part of my experience. It's very important. So we drop the guys off. We get to home. Chris Jr. is panicked. He's running through every room, 5 bedroom house, three baths. He goes in every room, turns the light, he closes the shades, turns the lights on, and locks the door. Even the bathrooms with no windows, he turned the lights on, locked the door. I'm in my study on television, computer, whatever I could find, trying to find out if it's, are we being invaded? We thought it was everywhere. Suddenly, we hear this noise come over, and it sounded what I thought was Fort Bragg, a helicopter. Because we live 20 miles from Fort Bragg, and all these helicopters are always flying around. And I just knew it was heading the direction it was going straight to the river. We're only 2.5 miles from the river. So I just knew that's what it was. And then the sound disappeared, and all of a sudden, the dogs start barking. When I say dogs, my dad was a hunter. At that time, he had 15 hound dogs in a kennel behind his house, and he'd always raised hounds. He had 100 at the time when I was growing up. So I grew up with a shotgun or a rifle. In fact, I was shot point blank at 10 years old, had a near death, and blew a hole in me big as that from 6 foot away in my back. Lucky I'm alive. So immediately all 15 hound dogs are barking, and they're barking a scary bark, like I don't know what that is. And you hear dogs, at night if they are unsure, they'll make these curious barks. Well, it reignited Christopher's fear again. And all I could think was this dog kennels, undoubtedly the dogs are seeing a burglar because dad had a 40-foot garage with boats and tools and stuff in it. And I shared it with him. So I could only think these dogs are seeing somebody trying to get in that shop. I said, Christopher, somebody's breaking into that shop. I'm going to have to go out there. No, Daddy, please don't go out that door. Please don't. I said, I got to see what it is. I said, we got Rosie, a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, 110-pound dog. She lives in the house. I said, I can put her in front and she'll see who it is and keep us protected. We'll just walk that way and using a flashlight. Hopefully, we can see what's going on and she'll scare him away. Well, he protested big time, but I opened the back door and he had me by the back of the shirt. And when I stepped out the door, Rosie took off. And she ran out about 40 feet and looked back to see if we were coming. And she saw us going towards her. She ran on down in the forest into a little dirt road, pretty good sized piece of land. The dog kennels was back behind. Dad and I lived beside one another, and the kennels was in the woods behind the house. So we take off that direction very quietly, walking slowly. Rosie's gone. She's down near the kennel, and this is this awfulest noise. Hound dogs are very loud. They have a big, loud voice, and they're all barking as fast as they can. They're see, they're seeing something. We knew it, and so we sneak up toward the kennel. I can see Rosie pointing behind the kennel into the forest, not toward the garage. I thought, that's strange. Why would they have gone behind the kennel? They would have gone back to the highway, the way they come in if somebody's breaking in the shop. So we got on up to where she was at, and all 15 hound dogs are looking behind the kennel in the woods. And I said, Christopher, maybe there's a bear or something in there. Dogs can be scared of a bear scent. It's foreign to them. They'll get spooked. I've seen it before. And I said, and she's froze. Her hair is standing up. She's snarling and pointing in the forest, and these other dogs are all looking that way. I'm whispering to Christopher, I said, I'm going to send her in and let her run out whoever or whatever's in. We'll run back to our property to the grass, and I want to run to the back, 600-foot deep property. I want to run back there to the back to this big old oak tree and just kind of hide behind it and see what comes out. Might get to see a bear. That's what I was thinking. So immediately I bumped her. She took off in the woods, and I took off running back toward the yard. And Chris had me by the back of the shirt. Chris Jr. He was 17 years old. We got to out of the two rut road into the grass, and I made a left turn to run to the back to cut this dog off to see what was coming because we could hear her coming through the forest. You have to move fast when you're hunting because dogs, sometimes an animal will be way out in front. So you don't got but a glimpse to see what it might be. So when I made the turn, Chris Jr. turned loose. I thought I had pulled away from him because it was icy and I kind of slipped a little bit and he just let go. What I didn't realize was he had no more time for this. He took off back to the house. He made a right, I made a left, and I didn't know it. So I ran back to the back of the property and I run in a full run up to this tree and stopped myself against that tree. And I'm trying to be quiet, but I'm panting for breath because I was a smoker then too. But I'm panting, trying to get my breath, trying to be quiet. I'm hearing the dog coming to me, and so I turned around to see. I just knew Junior was behind me, going to run up behind me with me. I had no idea he had gone the other way. But when I had my hands against this tree, when I turned to look back, that's when everything changed. They're about 4 feet away. Just if I'd have leaned a bit, I could have touched it. Was this little being that was glowing the color of the moon. It had a triangle on its chest, which that got the attention of everybody, NASA and the, all these agencies. It was that close, and I was in shock, and fear set in, and I just knew it had. I knew I was a goner. I just felt that from the fright. I didn't. Words can't describe. The feeling of being trapped. I'm caught. So I felt like, and so I pulled myself closer to the tree, and I turned around to face it, dropped my hands to my side. I said, I surrender. I'm not here. I don't mean any harm. And the dog's coming. I still hear the dog coming. All this happened so quick. And this thing said very loudly, you don't understand. We're not here to help hurt you. We're here to help you. And about that time, Rosie comes on out of the forest, and this just vanishes. It just dematerialized right in front of me. Weird thing was when I reported it, MUFON, this UFO group, come out. They found this. Um, they found some stuff in the soil and all that was very unusual. And the tree had actually killed it. Where it was standing, it killed the limbs and all. They thought maybe it just hopped up in the limbs above me, but who knows? Anyhow, Rosie comes on by and runs out of hearing. So I thought I better not tell Chris Jenner what just happened. So I walked on up to the house and I could see him in the back door looking through full glass window, waiting for me to get there. And I was lost for words how to tell him. And so I needed a cigarette really bad. I just had to smoke because my anxiety was out the window. I don't smoke anymore, and I quit not too far after that. Um, so I walked in my study, and I walk up to my study was a sunroom, and it had couches around the perimeter with windows along behind the couch. So I put my knees on the couch, reached over, and raised the blunt. And Junior's like, "No, what are you doing? Don't do that, Dad." I said, I got to smoke, son. I can't smoke in the house. I'll blow it out the window. This is what I was telling him and what I was thinking. So when I raised that blind up, he had all the outside lights on. I saw something walking toward me from, I would say, more than 20 or 30 yards away. plain as sight. The spotlights on the corner of the house illuminated, and it was a very tall looking being coming toward me. And it scared me so bad. I didn't tell him. I just said, "Come with me." And we jumped in my truck. We ran out the front door, jumped in the truck, and we went about 5 or 6 miles away to this big hayfield I knew. Pulled right out in the middle of it and left the truck running. That way we felt a bit safer. And we stayed the rest of the night there. And the next morning when I got up, I had no more symptoms of Crohn's. And for 18 years, I had been treated for it. And from this day forward, I've been completely healed from it. No signs of it. Never taken another bit of medicine. I can drink, eat anything I want. And but that's when trouble started from the community and the church. And I write about this in my book. And so much more has happened, but that was the original event in a condensed version.
Okay. Oh man, thank you so much for sharing that. So just some questions, if I could. Uh,
Sure.
you mentioned the beings that Chris saw down by the river, also the one that you encountered by the tree with the
Right.
dog. You said that one was small, almost like a child.
I looked like a little child. It
Okay.
didn't look like the aliens you see on TV, the grays with the, it looked more like a, a child. A little different, but glowing. It was glowing like the moon, the soft white.
Okay,
But it had,
and then a triangle on the chest.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And now later in the book, you talk about another encounter with this being that you call the lady.
Yeah.
That is this like very beautiful being that almost like what Hollywood would think of as an angel.
Right.
Tell us just a little bit about the lady.
Well, what brought that on, and I'm 100% sure of it, is from that day forward in '07, I was I was completely all about telling this to everyone. They put that in me so strongly, I had to share it. And the more that my church ostracized me and the community churches around, they started making pilgrimages to my house with holy water, and they got some of them in between me and my children and said, "Your dad's dealing with the devil," and it caused the most horrific problems at my home. Even the school, somebody at the school, one of the teachers, started questioning my little girl, and she's all about daddy, right? But somebody there called social services on me, saying I was unfit for a father. Now I've got the government investigating me, or the, social services and the community and all these people. And so they started, it was destroying my kids because they were seeing it. They were experiencing this with me at my house. It never went away. My wife was experiencing it. They just knew it was something evil. And so after 5 years, 2012 comes along. I'd had all I could handle. My daughter came home that week crying. They made fun of her in school, and my boys were 13, 15, and 17 trying to date girls in school, and it had crushed them. Their dad's a crazy, and you know, and they it just was the most awful thing to go through. It wasn't the phenomenon that was the problem, it was the people. All this time, I have NASA at my house since 2008 trying to investigate. I couldn't talk about this publicly. So that night, Easter, Good Friday, um, Saturday night before Easter, Sunday morning, I walked outside and I looked up at the heavens and I shouted, "I'm done. You came, you healed me. You won't let me share you outside of my family. I can't prove to anybody anything. Uh, you asked me to tell the world I'm doing that. And now they're just, it's just destroyed my children." who they are. They're young teenagers. I don't want any more to do with this. So I'm saying this to this guy, right? And 3 o'clock in the morning, I hear this manly voice, deep set of rise. I get up and dress myself for whatever reason. Uh, there was this movement from at the foot of my bed, which we'd all seen these shadowy beings in our house. Often, a flash of light, you'd see an orb appear in a flash, and out would step this shadowy figure and walk right through the walls and stuff. My wife saw it many times, all of us. So that's what I'm looking at now. And for whatever reason, I walk out the back door at 3 in the morning, in tow behind these shadowy figures, and they lead me up to the dog kennel where it all happened before. And to shorten the whole story without getting too deep, suddenly this mighty rush of wind. It was a wind that wasn't in the trees around. It was concentrated directly in front of me in a small area, and it was so hard and fast, it just blew me off balance backwards. When I hit the ground on my back, as I'm going to backwards, I see what looked like a translucent cow run right over top, and I could see the stars through it as it went over me. And it scared me. So I land on my back, I roll to my stomach, and I'm getting up to run. And I grew up, my neighbor has a dairy farm. I worked with them. We were tobacco farmers, and you know, it, it was it was a familiar sight that I was afraid of. I didn't have no idea what I was seeing, but anyhow, I get up to run, and I never made it but to my knees because now there's no more cow there. There's this woman, and she's glowing, and her feet are not on the ground. They're about chin high to me, which is probably, I'm on my knees, and she's probably 3 feet off the ground to her feet. And she looks at me, most beautiful thing I ever saw. She's glowing. She looks just like you and me, just a woman, beautiful lady, but she had this white dress that went from a collar out to her hands and down to nothing but her toes showing. And she looks at me and she says, "You know why I'm here. This is your burden you must bear." And I knew what it was about because I'd had this intense uh, purpose to tell what it was, what I saw, that I had to tell it, but I refused to tell it anymore. And she came to say, "No, you got to tell this. And if you do, I will be here with you and I'll help you. And I'll see to it that you can share our presence with other people. And we'll let you start filming us with camera and witness." And so help me, for 5 years, I never had one bit of data at all. I could never film anything. I had cameras, or there's stories written about cameras that broke when I tried to take pictures. Brand new Panasonic digital camera, fried it, the whole article on that. But from that point forward, I was able to start getting photos, and I was able to bring people to my house or go to their house and ask it to come, and it comes. And to this day, I have thousands of videos and photos and witnesses from NASA to the DOD to the DIA to the CIA, many different people within those organizations and others have been on my property. We've filmed it, they've witnessed it, and yeah, so that day forever changed everything. And I made a commitment with her that I would continue forward. And it took me a while to tell it because I was afraid that they're already labeling me crazy now. I start talking about a glowing woman, they're gonna lynch me. And
Yeah.
that's all I can think about. But
Yeah,
that,
the only thing worse than being called crazy is double crazy, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
uh now you mentioned in the book, this is a big part of the story, at least for me, that you know, you go through this intense background check. because you've been invited to NASA to
Yeah,
come out. You go through this massive building. You're invited to go into where the astronauts live for weeks before heading off into space. Only 300 people, 300
right.
humans have ever been in there. One president, zero members of Congress. But while you were out there, somebody mentioned to you, listen, NASA, the military, they're all aware of these orbs, these beings, these crafts, but they won't interact with us. The
Right.
reason that we want to get to know you is they will interact with you. So they're aware of these. And so is this why they've become so curious about you and your story? Is the fact that they'll spend time in your presence, or what's the reasoning behind that?
That's 100% why. It was NASA people that told me. And I mentioned this guy in the book. Of course, I had already been working with NASA since 2008 when they first came on the scene, where other players started coming in, and these guys were part of the National Reconnaissance Office. And I asked them, I said, because I was afraid of the government to start with. The UFO world made us all afraid, and the movies about Men in Black was out during that time, and so government was scared. They'll kill you. Well, that hadn't been my experience along that way. But when I got to the call to come, I said, "Why? Why are you bothering me? Why are you here? My children are afraid. Why are you here? Why are you briefing us with an official briefing?" He said, "Because we see it and we film it, but it has absolutely nothing to do with us. And we know it likes you. So we'd like to study this with you. And if you'll keep this quiet and not tell anything, we'll let you in on some secrets. And, you know, you let you know a few things that everybody don't." So there went the next longest time, 10 years before I started talking. When I wrote the book, I started revealing things that I had previously never told. And there's still a lot that I haven't told. A lot.
Well, I know we're coming up on our time here. I want people to have I wanted them to hear it from you directly, but I also want them to have the opportunity to read the book. Off camera, I told you how my wife and our best friends, husband and wife, this last summer we were standing out, or no, we were sitting out on my patio. All the lights were off. It was dark, and I saw this blue orb going north towards the Salt Lake airport. And I told my friend, "Get up. Oh my gosh, what is this? What is this?" And we watched it, and he said, "I've never seen anything like that. I know it wasn't a drone. I know it wasn't a small airplane. There was no green and red lights blink. It was like this steel gray blue that was glowing, and it was just moving at a very consistent speed. And we watched it for probably about 3 minutes until it disappeared. And I told my wife, I don't know what we just saw. Um, and my friend said, I don't know what we saw either, but I know for a fact I saw it. And I said, I know for a fact I saw it. Now, nothing ever came to me. Nobody ever came to me. But so when I was reading your book, that memory jogged for me, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I've seen one of these glowing orbs. And I've even had here on YouTube videos where there's little things in the camera. I've always assumed they were, maybe specks of dust catching some light in a weird way, or something. But um, anyway, I wanted to have you on, Chris, to be able to tell this story. Do you have some video? Because I've seen one of the videos. I was telling you this before, where you guys are out. You can tell it's like an open field area, and all of a sudden this light, like out in, not in space, but out in the atmosphere, glows. It comes up and it's moving, and then there's another one, and then they're like gone. And
Yeah,
so, do you have some video like that I could share with my community?
absolutely. I'll send you a half a dozen or more if you'd like. share them if you want. But we have I have 3,000 in the last 2 years, I think, just in the last 24 months, and it's categorized by day and time. So I can tell you the days I've been out. It's digitally recorded, timestamp. So imagine 17 years worth of that. I have a lot, but I'll share gladly.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming just based on what you said, here in 2024, these appearances, these encounters are still occurring.
With a greater than ever. Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody asked me this week, it was an Army colonel, was asking me about the number of, they want to know, is it same question? I said, well, yeah. And I pulled my digital thing out, and it's the last 7 days of recording. I had 73 videos just in 7 days. So it was over 10 a day, and I record half of what I see. Because sometimes it'll appear close as a flash of light or so quick you can't get a camera on it, right? So we really experience a lot more than we ever record on video. But
Okay. And you mentioned some of them are small enough, like maybe like a basketball size, and others you mentioned have been as big as a house.
yeah, yeah. And how they do it, I don't know, but they can increase their size from the smallest speck of light to, I mean, like a firefly size light, up to 40, 50 feet around just instantly. It can grow that big very quickly. And it can, I've seen them turn black, where if you see it's a translucent orb that's glowing is now a black ball in the sky, or even a metallic looking. They can look steel gray. So what it is, I don't know. But what I can tell you, one of the most important things of all, that you never hear about this, but I'll not quit talking about it because it's important, is there's a pattern that exists, a clear pattern, and I can prove it through all the people that write me. So many people write me daily. I bet I have 4,000 emails now I haven't even looked at. That's how much comes in.
Wow.
But all these people write me all say the same thing because I ask them. They want to tell the story. My first question is, okay, beautiful story, but tell me what life was like when it was going on. What triggered this to happen? And they'll all say the same thing. My grandma died, my mother died, my uncle died, my son. I lost my job. I'm homeless. Just abuse from childhood abuse. And it's usually suffering and trauma is the common thread you'll find in every one of these people. Very, very rare not to have that. So, what does that mean? Why does it care about that? Why would an alien care about suffering? Me crying out to God, help me, because I want to die. I'm 45, 6 years old, and I can't feed my children. I lost an empire, $18 million in net worth all went out the window, gone. And but it's a common thread. Trauma, suffering is that thread. So I don't want to label what it is because I really don't know, but I can share that it's never been negative to me. Only the people have been the negative part. Um, it's I've seen many blessings. People's health changed. I get people write me every day, ask me, "Would you remember me?" And I always say, "Yeah." And then people write me back, "I'm pain free," and I'm not doing anything. I think, is it placebo? Is people getting hope from this? Because I'm just me. I think the phenomenon is what's doing it, helping. I don't know. I'm as lost as everybody else, but
Yeah.
I do know what makes it come for me, anyhow.
Yeah. As I read through the book myself, I was like, okay, at first I was thinking UFOs, right? then as I started getting deeper into the story, I was like, okay, maybe these are angels. And then the word that kept coming to me was caretakers,
Yeah.
like just somebody watching out, like watchers, observing, make letting you know, hey, there's something more than this
Yeah.
earthly existence, this dimension. There's something more, and it's all going to work out. I don't know. That was kind of the feeling I got as I read through the book.
I think you're 100% correct, and that is a new age coming, um, a new knowledge from what I was told. And I think that's going to be the reality that, we need to revisit this evolution thing. We need to revisit everything we've understood so far and realize consciousness is real and it is far stranger than we ever thought. And we can't label it because we have no clue. We can just say, that's my thing is I want people to know there's something greater.
Yeah.
There's something there and it's alive and here's our thoughts. It knows what you think. There is, I mean, you don't have to say it. All you gotta do is think it. And here it appears in front of people just by me putting my thoughts out in front of hundreds sometimes. Groups of 30 and 35 people have seen it come out of the air right on up to ground level. And this is how, and we filmed it. We filmed it on the History Channel beyond Skinwalker from 40 feet away. It came out of there and went right up through us, and they filmed it. Wow, they had me wired up. Scientists watching it. I had a EEG thing on my brain, and it's just we've done a lot of that,
Yeah.
a
Well,
lot of research.
I want to thank you for coming on, sharing the story. I'm going to leave a link to UFO of God down below. They can also check out ufoofgod.com to follow and learn more about when the movie's coming out. Thank you so much. I know you don't do these interviews very often, so I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad that you and Junior are doing better, and that you guys are able to now document this. So thank you again. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'll get you those videos today for
Great.
sure.
Thank you. Okay. Have a great
Thank
rest of your day.